Right, doing these in batches has been the best thing I've ever done. All right, video 10. Cool, all right, so chapter 10, we are going to be talking about my NFT project called MetaTrees, where we plant trees in exchange of minting NFTs, and then SoilConnect, my digital agency that sat at the center of earth caring and digital. And so I'm now in Sydney. So if you watched the last video, you would have heard me say that I moved to Sydney and that working at Farming Secrets and the Soil Learning Centre became a little bit more difficult with the distance. Just kind of been in that project for a while and realizing that maybe I needed to focus in other areas. And so I'm in Sydney, relocated for a couple of years post-COVID, and meet this amazing guy called Teal, and he's very switched on. He's young, he's kind of driven with regenerative agriculture. His parents own a farm, and we launched a project called MetaTrees. And so we were seeing that there was kind of this trend of crypto and NFTs, and if you don't know what they are, they're just like digital artwork. But a lot of people were saying, like, why are people creating these digital artworks, NFT, that are like using energy and ruining the planet? And so we're like, well, what if you could mint an NFT that was a digital tree that sat in the digital world, but it also planted a real tree? And so, yeah, we launched that product, that program. We planted 1,000 trees out of that project. We were a lot more ambitious. We thought we were going to get to like 25,000 trees, and we're going to become squillionaires, and also do good in the planet. It was kind of like a win-win-win. People were planting trees that were like geo-marked, and you could watch that tree grow. That was the whole project. And that, we found a farmer out in New South Wales who planted our first batch of trees, and they're all ID'd and they're all tagged and they're all kind of tracked on an app. But the project didn't really go the way that we thought. And because we only sold 1,000 trees, well, we actually only sold 750 trees, but we planted the first batch of 1,000, hoping that we'd at least get to 1,000. But, again, it didn't really work, but I like the idea of like having an idea, seeing this kind of new trend and going, well, people are minting NFTs just for no reason at all. So what if there was an actual real life reason attached to it? And I think this is another example of like, how does the digital world and the real life world kind of meet in the middle? So MetaTrees was an amazing project. It was fun. Again, we learned a lot about, minting contracts, the NFT world, crypto, Ethereum. It was a great learning curve. MetaTrees then also kind of helped us think about, well, is there a way that people can share farms together? And we created meta farms. So we had MetaTrees and meta farms, and we had this idea of like buying a farm together and sharing it and doing like the whole co-working idea on meta farms. But that also, people were very skeptical about like, are you on title? And like, is this legal? And will you run away with our money? And there was just way too many questions and was again too early. Since then, another company, there's this kind of new concept of what's known as fractionalized ownership of something. Like you can own a syndicate of a horse, or you can own like a fraction of an artwork. And there are some companies now that are doing models where you can own parts of a farm or a title. And so the technology and other companies have moved that forward, but we wanted to buy a farm and regenerate it as a working model. And that's why it was called Meta Farms, because like some of the trees were going to be put on Meta Farm, and we're going to regenerate. We're going to take like a degraded bit of land and regenerate it. Until my business partner then would be the farm manager, and like we would get carbon credits and we would share those carbon credits with everyone. And on paper, and even saying it now, sounds magical. And I think it is still doable, but because it's finance and because it's money, it's people are very skeptical, and rightfully so, because people are getting scammed left, right, and center. So we put that on the back burner, and we thought maybe the market's not ready for that. And while I'm in Sydney doing these projects, I really was like missing the soil world, and I needed to create some kind of income. And so I started SoilConnect, and SoilConnect was my agency, digital marketing, but my niche was only earth caring businesses. So if you were doing good for the planet, whether it be regenerative agriculture, organic, whether you were like doing sustainable clothing line, or like organic cotton for clothing, as long as you're doing good for the planet, but mainly more like soil-based companies. And because I had like lots of networks from my podcast and people I'd met over the years, I was able to kind of launch this and get a bunch of clients very early. And I was running SoilConnect for a couple of years. I got stuck with like scaling it beyond myself. And I was kind of stuck between hiring more team. AI wasn't really a thing yet. There's all these like little threads of like things haven't happened yet. Maybe I should just go backwards and just redo all my business ideas again. Anyway, but SoilConnect was really like it was interesting because at the time I was like, how do I get my passion of soil and digital together and create SoilConnect? And then I got to this ceiling and I couldn't break the ceiling. And some friends of mine in Melbourne were running their agency and they needed some talent as well. And so they knocked on my door and said, we see what you're doing. Do you want to come and merge with us? And so I did merge SoilConnect into that. And maybe I'll wrap these videos up. Maybe I can just put it all together in a nice bow. So then I moved on to I think I will merge all these together. And so then I merged SoilConnect in with SGD, which is for Seriously Good Design. And the clients from SoilConnect came into the SGD ecosystem, which meant that now there was a bigger team of people behind the marketing, and it wasn't just me doing everything and moving all the levers. And sometimes that can be quite exhausting. And so having a team together was great. However, what I then realized is because I then lost my link to soil, my heart became very empty. And while I enjoyed digital and getting closer to the now, AI came in and everything was getting done by AI. And I could see that, staff were delivering things by AI and contractors were delivering things by AI. And I was like, well, if you're just going to AI the task, why don't I just AI it and we'll shortcut you? And then I kind of took the soul out of it a little bit. I was kind of like not really loving digital anymore. And and then I did this erratic thing where I quit my job, left a relationship, moved out a little bit more into like the greenery away from the cities, and took a couple of months off not working. Just kind of, I feel like in hindsight, I had hit a bit of a burnout. There was just a lot to unpack from like post-COVID, moving to Sydney, then moving back to Melbourne. So when the merger happened, it was also timed well with coming back to Melbourne. And so, I kind of left, the SoilConnect brand to the side, even though the merger meant that both could run parallel. There just wasn't time. I picked up a bunch of clients. I was, moving operational things forward. I was nurturing team. I was going to client meetings. I was taking calls. I was, I then moved away from like building my own business and then helping others build their business. So the merger to Seriously Good Design was a nice reminder for me that I need to stay in the soil lane. And that when I lose the soil connection, I become really disjointed. And it was really hard for me to show up authentically after that. So that kind of brings us to the now. So the last couple of months, I have been taking a bit of a work hiatus, a career pause, a gap year in my career, or a midlife awakening, as what I've called it on some of my Instagram videos. Because I also hit 40. So my age clicked over to 40, and maybe it was a little bit of like a midlife crisis of like, what am I doing? I mean, a midlife awakening of like, what am I doing? Where am I going? What does all this mean? AI is going to take all our jobs, and kind of sitting with that. But I don't want to go deep into those topics because that is kind of part of my next series of like unpacking who I am and who I'm kind of becoming. And so a lot of these chapter videos has been a bit of a trip down memory lane for me to remember what I've done, who I've been in contact with, different fun projects I've worked on, a bit of nostalgicness, and I've been carrying these along for a couple of months now. And so like today I was just like, I'm done with carrying these, like let's just get them all done in one go, publish them all out, and then close the door on these chapters. So, these are all the things that I've done up until now. We're in 2026. I might just run my eyes over any other major things. No. So yeah, pretty much that's everything. Back in Melbourne, living on some land in the outer parts of Melbourne, much more connected with birds, sounds, wildlife, nature, skylines of blue and green. And I just know that my nervous system feels way more relaxed in an environment like this. It doesn't mean I'm driving around a lot more. I have to go further everywhere, but I think that's a small trade-off for like with the benefit I get here. And so, yeah, I'm in that new chapter. I don't know how this next chapter is going to be written. What I do know is that it is going to have soil at the heart and the center. I've done my permaculture design certification. I've gone to, a lot of conferences over the last few months that are all about soil. I've attended soil masterclasses. I went to my first Confest, and if you don't know what that is all about, Google Confest. It's a conference and festival that meet out on land for a whole couple of days, and it's all very organic and natural and been running for 50 years, and the first time I heard about it was this year. And so, yeah, I definitely feel like I'm in a very different headspace now. I feel a lot more grounded. I feel a lot more connected. I feel a lot more slower, intentional. And I'm really excited about what next chapters kind of unfold. And so the next series that I'm kind of going to be nurturing is what I'm calling the Becoming Ray. So one of the things I realized is that I had all these labels. It was the farmer ray, the agency ray, the regen ray, there's all these kind of labels that I've tried to fit myself into. But who the hell is Ray? Who am I at my core? How am I a strong unit and gravitate other projects around me that align deeply with who I am? And so that's, what the Becoming Ray series is all about. And it'll just be me dumping my ideas and thoughts, and it'll be a bit more in the now. It won't be memory lane, but it'll be like, what am I working on? And, so if that tickles your fancy, feel free to subscribe and follow along for that. But I think it was important for me to do this chapter videos to like, where have I come from before I go, where am I going? And one of the last things I'm going to leave you with is that I did a very transformational program called Superhumans with Amy Bell. And it's all around embodiment work, shadow work, NLP, and, leadership training and personal development. I don't know how to give it so many labels, but it was just one of the best things I've ever done. And it really made me realize who I am. And it kind of gave me the slap across the face that I needed to be like, this is who you are and this is where you need to be in order for you to be grounded. And then making some massive shifts, like leaving a job, leaving a relationship, leaving, the city, coming out to more of the outer skirts, but leaving everything with so much grace, so much beautifulness. My ex and I are still great friends. We literally hung out last night and played board games. We've gone to dinners together. Like, it's just a wholesome relationship. I'm still in contact with my last working environments, like everything offboarded what I feel like was gracefully and amicably. And I'm not burning bridges in order to escape projects or exit things, which I think I may have done in the past. There's not a lot of like bad energy around a lot of things, but there's things that happen maybe a little bit abruptly. But I've really tried hard to make sure that all the relationships with people I've been in contact over the years are left in a nice, comfortable space, and that it's all, just held neatly and beautifully. So, because that is what I stand for. So, join me on the next journeys of Becoming Ray and see what amazing or not amazing adventures I go on 2026 and beyond. All right, peace out.